peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for joining us. It is 3 p.m. East African time, and we're coming to you from Kenya's capital here in Nairobi. This is Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to bring you the news-making headlines across the continent of Africa. Thank you for joining us. So I'll just get into it, and we start with South Africa, where at least 2 men were injured on Monday after attackers raided and burnt shops owned by foreign nationals in the city of Durban, South Africa, local media has reported. The attacks have been linked to young members of the Umkhonto Wasinze Military Veterans Association, the former ANC's armed wing. The South African Human Rights Commission was due to meet those involved in the violence on Tuesday, as it has expressed concern that it could trigger more widespread attacks. We head over to Senegal, where Senegal's main opposition leader Ousmane Sonko has called for more protests against President Macky Sall, whom he accuses of being behind the rape charges he's now facing. Mr. Sonko was addressing supporters hours after being released on bail following the most violent unrest Senegal has seen in years. He is accused of assaulting a woman who worked in a beauty salon. Mr. Sonko said the demonstrations should be larger but also peaceful and lead to change in the presidential election due in 3 months. There are concerns that Mr. Sall may seek a third term in office. The incumbent has since appealed for calm. We head over to South Sudan, where the governor of Western Bahr el Ghazal state has stated that her government is unable to deliver services but rely on partners for assistance. Sarah Cleto, who was appointed in June 2020, says she has not been able to meet the needs of the citizens due to lack of budget. South Sudan is yet to adopt a new budget since 2019. The country's financial year covers 12 months, which runs from 1st July to 30th of June each year. The Minister of Finance last year presented over £218 billion budget estimated before the Council of Ministers. The same has not been done at the National Parliament. South Sudan's National Parliament does not exist. It has not been reconstituted as per the September 2018 revitalized peace agreement. Head over to Equatorial Guinea, and at least 98 people have been killed and more than 600 others are injured after multiple explosions at a military camp in Equatorial Guinea on Sunday. The state television channel broadcast footage of wreck and burning buildings, with people, including children, being pulled from the rubble and the wounded lying on hospital floor. It showed images of a thick column of black smoke, which they said was coming from the Toma military camp in the economic capital of Bata. The first blast occurred in the early afternoon. In the early evening, referred to casualties, but it said it had not determined whether there were any fatalities at that time. Equatorial Guinea has been under the rule of the 78-year-old President Teodoro Obiang Nguema for nearly 42 years. And by the way, he's the longest-serving president in Africa. And on top of that, his son is the vice president of the same country, Equatorial Guinea, and it had a population of about 1.4 million. I don't know, of all that, they have not found somebody who could replace Obiang or another person who's not his son to be the vice president. I do not understand. Let's move over to Niger. And Niger's President Mahamadou Issoufou has won this year's $5 million Ibrahim Prize for achievement in African leadership for his work in promoting economic progress and joining regional efforts to quell the threat of Islamist militants. Issoufou was first elected in 2011 and re-elected in 2016. He stepped down after serving 2 terms, unlike other African leaders such as Guinea's Alpha Conde and Ivory Coast Alassane Ouattara, who pushed through changes to the constitution to run for 3rd terms. The number of Nigerians living below the poverty line has also fallen to 40% from 48% a decade ago. That is according to statistics in the country. So far, is said to be succeeded by the former Interior Minister Mohamed Bazoum, who won the presidential election in February. And then we go to Nigeria, where the ongoing trial of the Shiite leader of the Islamic movement of Nigeria, Ibrahim Zakzaki, resumed at the Kaduna State High Court. Prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and provided new evidence in their case against the embattled religious leader. However, the case was adjourned to 31st of March 2021. Sheikh Zakzaki and his wife Zinat have been in detention since December 2015. They face trial charges, including unlawful assembly, a culpable homicide, and disruption of public peace. And still staying with Nigeria, reactions continue to trail the federal government's vaccination program against COVID-19, as some Nigerians on social media have asked President Muhammadu Buhari to vaccinate the citizens against the killer Fulani herdsmen terrorizing the country. Nigeria rolled out its vaccination program against the lethal coronavirus infection on Friday with about 4 million doses of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. The Punch had reported that the President and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo were vaccinated against the virus on Saturday on live TV to demonstrate the safety of the vaccine and dissipate vaccine hesitancy amongst Nigerians. Nigerians who wish to receive the vaccines are enjoined to register on the website of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. However, some Nigerians have said there was the need to vaccinate the country against the killer herdsmen. Of late, the southern part of the country especially has been inundated with activities of criminal nomadic Fulani herdsmen who have been accused of sundry crimes, including invasion of the farmlands of host communities, rape, murder, kidnapping, amongst other acts. Dozens of victims have been recorded in the last few months, while state governments have mulled banning open grazing in the region, amongst other measures to curb the insistent crimes and clashes between farmers and herders. Many Nigerians had also complained about the silence of President, who is also Fulani ethnic background. They have said the body language of President and his failure to condemn the activities of criminal Fulani herders is a clear terms that he has emboldened the criminals to continue perpetuating their heinous acts. And I think this is a conversation we've had here time and time again. So if you are familiar with what is happening there in Nigeria and why Nigerians would ask for them to be vaccinated against the Fulani herdsmen, you'd understand if you're familiar with a level of insecurity that has become part of Nigeria and synonymous with the northern Nigeria, and that is courtesy of the Fulani herdsmen. And as you know, Nigerians, they are joking about it, but really it's not a joke. President Muhammadu Buhari has been quite reluctant to address the issue head on. Move on to Libya, and at least 3 members of the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum have been accused of receiving bribes to elect Abdelhamid Deba as Prime Minister, according to a report by the United Nations Expert Panel on Libya. One of the delegates of the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, entrusted by the UN with electing a Prime Minister, was reportedly making a scandal in the lobby of a hotel in Tunis when he discovered that his colleagues had been offered close to $500,000 in bribes, compared to only $200,000 he was given. Now, these accusations could call into question Deba's election. His list had obtained 39 votes against 34 to his opponent's list, given yet as favorite in February. 75 people chosen by the UN to represent a wide spectrum of Libyan life selected on an interim administration led by billionaire Deba and a 3-member presidential camp. There are 75 people were chosen by the UN to do the selection, and there you have it, a lot of corruption happening there. So apparently this person was passing by and he had 2 people at a lobby at a hotel where the selection of the Prime Minister was supposed to happen. And these people are arguing, and one of the person there had been bribed about $500,000 US, and then he had only received about 200,000, so that he felt it was not very fair. And you wonder, with the state at which Libya is at right now, who is sponsoring, who is giving out such monies, and who is really sponsoring this candidate, the now, Prime Minister. Hamid Deba. He was elected and he sailed through. But, who gives out this much money? Who is his sponsors? Because, interesting. when it comes to Libya, it's a bit complicated. A lot of players there, especially foreign interference. There is a lot. So we shall continue and to see that story, and we shall continue to bring you the latest there from Libya. And the talks, the peace talks still continue, and this, it came out from Morocco. That is when they were able to have another selection of another prime minister that is supported by the United Nations. So let's see if that will place Libya on a path to finding peace. We go over to Benin, where the leader of Benin's largest opposition party and first female presidential candidate has been arrested and accused of planning to assassinate several political figures, a government spokesman said on Monday. Now, Rika Madugu's candidacy for the presidential election in April 11th was rejected by Electoral Commission on Thursday last week for failing to garner signatures of support from 16 mayors or members of parliament. Many opposition figures are already in exile or barred from office in Benin, a West African state which critics say has veered into authoritarian and tyrannism under the president Patrice Talon. A total of 20 will-be candidates officially handed in their documents to run for the presidency, but the Electoral Commission said only the 3 chosen had met the requirements. Talon, a cotton magnate who was elected into office in 2016, said at a time he wanted to serve a single term only before changing his mind and announcing his candidacy in January for the April vote. He will face former Minister Alassane Soumano and Corentin Kaho, a dissident opposition figure. Separately, Sebastian Ajavon, a key opposition figure who came in third in the last election and was convicted of drug trafficking in 2018 and sentenced to 20 years in prison, was sentenced in absentia on Monday to 5 years for forgery and fraud. Ajavon is currently living in exile in France, like many of the country's opposition members. We go to Tunisia, where a court in Tunisia has sentenced the brother-in-law of ousted President Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali to 10 years in jail for corruption. The court found that Balhassan Trabelsi and the owner of El Hiwar TV had set up a private company where they siphoned off advertising revenues from state television. The men were fined about $15 million. President Ben Ali fled abroad after months of protest 10 years ago. And then we go to Zimbabwe, where the United States has renewed its targeted sanctions against Zimbabwe, citing President Emerson Mnangagwa's reluctance to roll out political and economic reforms. U.S. President Joe Biden, in a letter to Congress, said in the last year Zimbabwe security services had committed Zimbabwean security services had committed several human rights violations. The U.S. has maintained punitive travel and financial measures against top Zimbabwean government and security officials since 2003 over alleged human rights violations and electoral fraud. At least 140 Zimbabwean entities and individuals are on the U.S. targeted sanctions list. Western countries have been putting pressure on President Mnangagwa by renewing targeted sanctions imposed during the late Robert Mugabe's era. The European Union on February 19th renewed an arms embargo against Zimbabwe's state-owned arms company and asset freezes as well as travel bans against top officials. Brussels' move followed the United Kingdom's decision to slap asset freezes and travel bans on Zimbabwe's 4 top security chiefs, as well as an embargo after leaving the EU at the end of last year. They both expressed concern over lack of progress in political and economic reforms President Mnangagwa promised 3 years ago following the coup that toppled late President Robert Mugabe. Australia, Canada and New Zealand also maintain targeted sanctions against Zimbabwe. We come back closer home and we go to Uganda, where the U.S. senators on the Committee on Foreign Relations have given the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, up to March 31st to present a detailed analysis of the U.S.-Uganda relationship, informed by an interagency review of whether continued partnership with the regime in Kampala poses risks to Washington's interest in the region. The senators Jim Risch of Idaho and Cory Booker of Washington, in a March 4th letter to Mr. Blinken said, despite repeated calls on the state democracy and human rights abuses in Uganda, the Washington-Kampala relations have remained largely unchanged for years, while the State Department and Department of Defense have generally responded with platitude. About the Kampala regime's essential contribution to AMISOM, managing the South Sudan peace process and the long-standing partnership on HIV/AIDS and additional Ugandan regional security. Uganda's State Minister for International Relations, Okello Oryem, told the East African newspaper, that is a newspaper here in Kenya, that the Ugandan government will respond to the senators appropriately once a letter is addressed to Uganda officially. So let's just wait and see. Remember, President not Mugabe, but President Museveni's sixth term win had been challenged there at the Supreme Court in Uganda, and then by opposition leader Bobi Wine, but he later, removed withdrew the petition there from Supreme Court, and I think now we are about to see a lot of things happening, especially coming from the U.S. and this new regime. And what these senators are saying, despite of what Uganda has been doing, the U.S. has not come out very strongly to condemn or to offer punitive measures, as we've seen them do in Zimbabwe, as we've seen them do in other African countries or other countries across the world. So they're saying, the response by the U.S. and the recent regimes, how they've been responding to the poor human rights records there in Uganda, to what we've been seeing happening there, the lack of democracy and all that, it has not been as stringent compared to other places, and that is because I think Uganda is a key in this region. We know Uganda has a good number of its soldiers in the AMISOM. Uganda, I think, is part of the people who are managing the peace process in South Sudan, which it has been accused largely of actually contributing to the instability in South Sudan. But yeah, it's part of that. So they're saying, that's why they've been a bit reluctant to come very harshly, because they feel Uganda's position in this important regional initiative or activities or just issues across this part of Africa is quite important. So they do not want to interfere with that. And, Uganda and the U.S. have a long-standing partnership on HIV and AIDS and additional regional security. And so I don't know how this will pan out for Uganda. Remember some of the key things that Bobi Wine had leveled against President Museveni. He had about 21 issues, a couple of them against President Museveni, a couple of them against the Electoral Commission of Uganda, and others against the Attorney General of the Republic of Uganda. But, the Chief Justice of Uganda, I think his name is Alphonse Ndolo something, Alphonse, right? So he used to be president. He represented President Museveni in the last petition by Amama Mbabazi that happened in 2016. He represented that also. Museveni's win was challenged, so he represented him. So President Museveni is his former client. So Bobi Wine was asking, how then do you expect this person that has had a working relationship with Museveni as his private lawyer, that he will come here and give a just ruling? And so he was asking for 3 specific justices in that team on the bench to recuse themselves because of their previous involvement with President Museveni, and of course they refused. And so Bobi Wine felt there was not a level playing field for him, and he felt he could not get justice from the Supreme Court of Uganda. He has not announced his, of course, next, of course, what he wants to do next. I'm sure President Museveni and his security apparatus, they are really waiting. I'm sure they've been offering him even state security 24 hours guarding his home, as they've done before. Remember, after the voting, which happened on the 14th of January, this year, he came from the polling station, went to his house, and he was locked in for about 11 days. He was not able to leave. Nobody was able to access him, and the government barricaded his home there. So I'm sure even right now, the security apparatus in Uganda are quite intense around his home and his supporters, and the leaders of his party And there has been a lot of, concerns coming from Uganda after that election. People are being pulled from their homes in the middle of the night. People are being kidnapped. And nobody really can account. Even the government police spokesperson a couple of days ago came out and said, you know what, it's true. We cannot account for this X number of people who were actually arrested by the police. So abductions there continue. We've seen critics like Stella Nyanzi, the professor, running to Kenya for safety and her family, because you cannot criticize President Museveni. And time again he has said, when it comes to violence, nobody can beat NRM. So you wonder, no wonder it has continued to retain the name National Resistance Movement, because you've been in power for what now, 35 years, and you still hold that name. You've not found the need to reform even the name of the ruling party. That tells you, that explains the nature of, how NRM and the government of Uganda continues to operate there in Uganda. Another story that has really caught my attention, this one from Zimbabwe. Okay, so United States. Remember, last year, President Donald Trump renewed a one-year targeted sanctions against a certain individuals and company there in Zimbabwe. And it has again renewed this year. It has renewed under President Joe Biden, renewed its targeted sanctions against Zimbabwe, citing President Emerson Mnangagwa's reluctance to roll out political and economic reforms. I wish they would explain what they mean by that, but we've seen what has been happening there in Zimbabwe, and maybe this is a conversation that we shall have on our next, the show that we usually do on every Tuesday. Today we did not have it because we were looking at, the handshake 3 years later, and what it has been able to do and achieve, and how it has impacted the lives of Kenyans here. So that was very important for us to have. So we did not have our usual show we have on Tuesday. So I think this is something that we shall discuss on our next show, when we shall be looking at Zimbabwe. And it's not only the United States that has these targeted sanctions against Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, at least 140 Zimbabwean entities and individuals, of course, on the U.S. targeted list, but also European Union on February 19th last month renewed an arms embargo against Zimbabwe state-owned arms company and asset freezes, as well as travel ban against top officials. And we saw also Brussels also has targeted sanctions. So the UK, also renewed targeted sanctions. Even countries like Australia, Canada, and New Zealand have maintained targeted sanctions against Zimbabwe. And a lot of these sanctions, I know they're calling them targeted against people and entities, they've targeted individuals, and a lot of these individuals owns, companies, multinational companies that has to deal with the Western, companies and economies. So if you target these companies, that means they cannot operate at their optimum, and so they lose out, and so that means employment of people there will be affected, and other factors that actually affect the lives of the people of Zimbabwe. So when you say targeted sanctions, they really don't go to hurt these people. A lot of them are rich people, wealthy. They really don't care, really. They can do without because they are okay. But there's a spillover effect that goes to affect the businesses that these people run, the number of people they employ, the kind of business they do, and what that means to the economy of Zimbabwe. So as much as it is targeted sanction against a person and entity, it's not just those people who are getting hurt. At the end of the day, there's a lot of other factors that come into play that also get affected by these sanctions. So I don't know why, but they're saying President Mnangagwa is very reluctant in his rollout of political and economic reforms there, and quite interesting. I'd like to hear what President Mnangagwa has to say. And in 2003, that was the first time the U.S. introduced these punitive and financial measures and, the sanctions, because they're saying Zimbabwe had a bad record of human rights violations and electoral fraud. And so they're saying that hasn't changed. Now, there's a story I started with all the way from South Africa about two men that were attacked because they're foreign nationalities. And by foreign nationalities, that means they come from other African countries. So this is another case of xenophobia there from South Africa. And at least 2 men were injured on Monday after attackers raided and burned shops owned by foreign nationals in the city of Durban. And that is where the last xenophobic attacks happened in 2019. Remember when we were talking about it? Yes, and the local media there has reported, and it is said that this is linked to a youth group that is attached to a former ANC's armed wing. So these are criminals. In a nutshell, these are criminals, and this is what a police station there say. They've said the alleged young members attacked and assaulted foreign vendors, petrol bombed some of their shops on Monday. That's a clear case of xenophobic attacks. So I just hope it doesn't get out of hand, because South African Human Rights Commission was due to meet those involved in the violence today to try to pacify them. But you see, if you keep pacifying these people and the real issues are not addressed there, South Africans, especially the black South Africans, have never really recovered from xenophobia. This is something that they've not reconciled their past and their future, and chatter away for a brighter their past and their present to help them chatter away for their future. So this is something that has to be addressed. They have to go to the root cause and see, over 25 years later of black leadership there in South Africa, why do you still have to have such incidences happen there in South Africa? Why do they find the need to target another African business, another person from the continent, the people who supported South Africa in getting their independence there, the people who aided them against the fight of apartheid? But they find that these are the people, these are their enemies, and that is not true. So what is really going on? So by this Human Rights Commission, meeting with these young South Africans and trying to pacifying them, you're not solving the problem. I think it's about time that South Africa started having this very difficult conversation. I know it's a wonderful country, and they call it a rainbow country, but this rainbow is a facade, man. It's not working. You guys need to have a very uncomfortable conversation and look at your past and reconcile with the present and see how you charter a way forward, so that these issues are spoken about. People get to know what's really happening in the hearts of some people there in South Africa. You cannot keep killing people like that. It is not acceptable, because they come from, and I like it when they call, I really don't understand how they will term another African, a foreigner. Well, I don't get it. And so I think they should be addressed very, very quickly. President Cyril Ramaphosa, make sure this doesn't get out of hand as it did there in 2019. Has to be addressed and must be addressed. We don't want to see those ugly events that happen there. So I hope that they're able to do that again. All right, Meshek, thank you so much for watching and for joining this afternoon. I shall have you on the show very soon, don't worry. Yes, and we talk about the BBI on our morning show. And another crazy country in the continent, Equatorial Guinea. As I mentioned there earlier, there's a blast that happened there on Sunday that have killed around, I think right now they've topped almost 100 people there. And Equatorial Guinea has the longest serving president in the continent of Africa. President Obiang Nguema has been there for 42 years. And he's only 78 years old. And he's not planning to go anywhere soon. And his son Obiang Teodoro, is the vice president. I still have to say that and remind us, because it's so unbelievable. A country that has a population of about 1.4 million people, the president could not find another person that was suitable to be his vice president. He had to go and have his son there as the vice president, just operating a country like it's a personal enterprise, like it's a family business of some sorts. And so his son, the vice president, after that blast, came out and vice president, he's responsible. He actually heads the docket. yes, of defense and security. And a lot of times he's just seeing around, private yachts and stuff across the world. I don't know what time this person works. And he appeared in the television footage at a scene of the blast, inspecting the damage, accompanied by his, guess who? Israeli bodyguards. He has Israeli bodyguards. The real deal. He's saying, Equatorial Guinea people cannot offer him as the vice president of the country. That is ridiculous. That is just ridiculous, taken to another level. Impunity, bad governance, corruption, just taken to just another bad level. And I don't know why we keep having them. Even in these regional bodies, and nobody speaks against this, because this is just unacceptable, and how the people of Equatorial Guinea are just quiet about it. So this blast actually came from a barracks. So who knows? Maybe people are just tired. I mean, 42 years, that's a long time. Obiang, you need to go home together with your vice president's son, who has Israeli bodyguards. What ridiculousness is this? I don't even understand. Okay. All right, and the issue of Nigeria, I think I've talked about that. The insecurity with the herdsmen, the Fulani herdsmen there from the north has continued. And of course, President Buhari's reluctance to really address this matter effectively has had the Nigerians have fun with it on social media. And they're saying, instead of giving us this vaccine, remember the first vaccine, the vaccination, Nigeria got its vaccine a few days ago. And the first vaccination, I think, was given on Friday. And they're saying, what we need more than even this COVID-19 vaccine, we need vaccine against Fulani herders. That is just how bad insecurity has been in Nigeria. And President Buhari, who comes from the Fulani ethnic background, really has been quite reluctant in addressing these issues. And the solutions he's been trying to come up with have been very bogus, really. And President Buhari is really quite aloof, just out of touch completely with what is happening there in Nigeria. So he's not been able to address the insecurity and other issues effectively. He doesn't even care that much. He's just there. President Buhari is just there waiting for his second term to end, and then he'll be out of office. When he came to office, his first promise was to get rid of Boko Haram in 100 days. We've seen that how that happened. Did nothing. Matter of fact, under his tenure, Boko Haram has been able to thrive and expound its territories there in not only Nigeria, but other countries across the Sahel region. We've seen Burkina Faso being affected. We've seen Cameroon. We've seen Chad. We've seen Niger. We've seen countries across the Sahel region being affected because of President Buhari's lack of leadership and decisive dealing with the Boko Haram insurgent group there. And now out of Boko Haram, there are also IS, Islamic militant there, and another group. So it's doing very well. And President Buhari doesn't care. President Buhari just does not care at all. And the issue in Benin, I know this is just one of the countries we don't get to talk about so much, because a little information or news hardly comes out of, Benin. And now the leader of Benin's largest opposition party and the first female presidential candidate has been arrested and is accused of planning to assassinate several political figures. This just is like a scene from a bad movie. She's planning to assassinate several political figures. And you will think, that is true. But if you look at how opposition leaders have been treated in Benin, then you wouldn't be surprised. This is not a surprise at all. So that is what is happening there. All right. Thank you so much for your time. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good afternoon. The government of Kenya is keen on the development of social economic infrastructure to support the realization of the Big Four Agenda and Vision 2030. The ambitious infrastructure projects are aimed at opening up the country for business and bolster productivity, particularly in the agricultural, manufacturing and the service industry, as this would bolster employment opportunities. Part of these critical infrastructure projects include the ongoing 27-kilometer expressway linking Nairobi's Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and Nairobi's Westlands. Upon completion, The expressway will exponentially reduce travel times within Nairobi and thus help the country save man-hours, which is being lost in the traffic jams on a daily basis. The Lake Victoria Port Modernization Project to increase cargo handling capacity of the port and to increase Kenya's bilateral and multilateral trading within the region. The expansion of healthcare facilities to facilitate fruition of the country's universal healthcare coverage under the Big Four agenda. By speeding up movement of people and goods, the government is aiming to promote trading through reduction of travel times and costs.